What if someone was secretly watching you every single day, living inside your own home, without you even knowing? It sounds like the plot of a horror movie, but this actually happened more than 100 years ago. This is the true story of one of the most terrifying and mysterious unsolved murder cases in history, the Hinterkaifeck Murders. The year was 1922. Deep in the countryside of Bavaria, Germany, there stood a lonely farmhouse. Its name was Hinterkaifeck. The farm was surrounded by forests, open fields, and complete silence. The nearest neighbors lived almost a kilometer away. There were no street lights, no telephones, no security cameras, just endless darkness every single night. It looked peaceful, but sometimes the quietest places hide the darkest secrets. The farmhouse belonged to 63-year-old Andreas Gruber. He lived there with his wife, Casilia Gruber, their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, a 7-year-old daughter, also named Casilia, her 2-year-old son, Joseph, and finally, a new maid, Maria Baumgartner. She had arrived only a few hours before everything changed forever. Life on the farm seemed completely normal. The family worked together every day. They cared for the animals, harvested crops, and lived a quiet life. But just days before the murders, something strange began to happen. One cold morning, fresh snow covered the ground. When Andreas walked outside, he noticed something unusual. There were footprints leading from the nearby forest straight toward the farmhouse. At first, that didn't seem strange, but then he noticed something terrifying. There were no footprints leading back. Someone had walked to the farm, but apparently never left. Andreas couldn't stop thinking about it. Who had come to the farm? Where had they gone? He searched the area, but found nothing. Then things became even stranger. Late at night, he started hearing footsteps. Not outside, but above him, in the attic. Slow, heavy footsteps, almost as if someone was walking across the ceiling. He grabbed a lantern and searched the attic, every corner, every room, but there was no one there, or at least no one he could see. A few days later, he discovered a newspaper lying inside the farmhouse. The family had never seen it before. It didn't belong to anyone. Then, one of the house keys mysteriously disappeared. No one knew where it had gone. Looking back today, many investigators believe someone may have already been hiding somewhere on the property, watching the family, waiting for the right moment. Despite everything, the family stayed. They never called the police. They never left the farmhouse. Perhaps they believed the strange events would stop, but they didn't. It was on the evening of March 31st, 1922. Their nightmare was only beginning. As darkness covered the farm, someone made the first move. One by one, members of the Gruber family would be drawn into the barn. None of them would ever return. And by sunrise, 6 innocent people would be dead. The first person to enter the barn was believed to be Andreas Gruber. No one knows exactly why he went there. Maybe he heard a strange noise. Maybe someone called his name. Or maybe he simply went to check on the animals. The truth died with him. The moment he stepped inside, the killer attacked without warning, without mercy. Using a heavy farming tool, Andreas collapsed inside the barn. He never had a chance to defend himself. A few moments later, his wife, Casilia, became worried. She noticed her husband hadn't returned, so she walked toward the barn. She expected to find Andreas. Instead, she met the killer. She became the second victim. Inside the farmhouse, everything seemed quiet. Victoria must have wondered why her parents hadn't come back. She also walked toward the barn, but she never returned. The killer was waiting, hidden in the darkness. Only one person remained outside, 7-year-old little Casilia. No one knows if she heard voices or if someone called her outside, but she too entered the barn. Moments later, the silence returned. 4 members of the same family had been murdered within minutes, but the nightmare was not over. The killer walked calmly back to the farmhouse. Inside, a 2-year-old boy named Joseph was sleeping peacefully. He had no idea what had happened. The killer entered the room, and Joseph became the 5th victim. The new maid, Maria Baumgartner, had arrived only that same day. She had worked for just a few hours. She never imagined her first day would also be her last. The killer found her and ended her life as well. By sunrise, the farmhouse was completely silent. 6 innocent people were dead. But what happened next is what makes this case so terrifying, because according to investigators, the killer didn't run away. He stayed inside the farmhouse for several days. Neighbors later reported seeing smoke coming from the chimney. Someone was keeping the fire alive. The farm animals were still being fed. The cows were milked. Meals appeared to have been prepared. Someone was living inside the farmhouse, even though the entire family was already dead. Imagine that. Sleeping, eating, walking through the house, knowing the victims were only a few rooms away. No one knows why the killer stayed. state. Maybe he wanted food, maybe he was hiding, or maybe he simply wasn't afraid of being caught. Whatever the reason, it remains one of the strangest details in criminal history. Days passed. No one saw the family. The young girl didn't arrive at school. The mail was left untouched. Neighbors began to worry. Something was terribly wrong, but no one could imagine the horrifying discovery that was waiting behind the farmhouse doors. Days turned into silence. No one had seen the Gruber family. The young girl didn't come to school. The family's mail started piling up. Something didn't feel right. On April 4th, 1922, several neighbors decided to visit the farmhouse. As they walked closer, everything seemed unusually quiet. The animals were still alive, but no one came outside. The front door was unlocked. The neighbors stepped inside. They called out for Andreas, for Victoria, for anyone, but no one answered. Then they walked toward the barn, and what they found would haunt them forever. Lying on the floor were 4 bodies: Andreas Gruber, his wife, Casilia, their daughter, Victoria, and little 7-year-old Casilia. The entire family had been murdered. The neighbors ran into the farmhouse, hoping someone was still alive, but inside they discovered the body of 2-year-old Joseph still lying in his bed. A few steps away, they found the new maid, Maria Baumgartner. She too had been murdered. 6 innocent lives had ended in complete silence. Police arrived soon after. The farmhouse became one of Germany's largest crime scenes. Investigators searched every room, every wall, every inch of the property, but the evidence only created more questions. There were signs that someone had stayed inside the farmhouse after the murders. Food had been eaten. The fireplace had been used. The animals had been cared for. Whoever committed these murders didn't leave immediately. They stayed for days, living alongside their victims. Police questioned neighbors, travelers, workers, and even family acquaintances. Over the years, more than 100 people were investigated. Several suspects were considered, but none could be proven guilty. The murder weapon was eventually found hidden on the property, yet even that failed. To identify the killer, as the years passed, new theories emerged. Some believed the killer was someone the family already knew. Others believed it was a wandering criminal. Some even claimed the murderer had secretly lived inside the attic before the attack, but no theory has ever been proven. In the end, the old farmhouse was demolished. It no longer exists. A new building stands nearby, but the mystery still remains. More than 100 years later, no one knows who committed the Hinterkaifeck murders or why 6 innocent people lost their lives on that lonely farm. Maybe the truth disappeared with the old farmhouse. Maybe the killer took the secret to the grave. Or maybe the answer is still hidden somewhere in the quiet fields of Bavaria. Until that day comes, the Hinterkaifeck murders will remain one of the world's most chilling, unsolved mysteries.